today, the First Lady, and she's expressed a desire to sing our song. So, here's how we do it. I hope Gary hasn't forgotten the tune. I hope you haven't forgotten the words. I hope I haven't forgotten the words. And I hope you haven't forgotten the words. One, two, three. Take me out to the ball. Me out to the buy me some.
The Monday Morning Quarterback on the 28th of April, 2018. Coming to you from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. The excitement was, of course, in Boston last night, and the Celtics came up short. This is a headline from the Globe, and it pretty much says it all. Celtics come up short in Game 7 against the Cavaliers. A picture of Mr. LeBron James here with his 35 points as part of the summary here. LeBron James scored 35 points with 15 rebounds and 9 assists on Sunday night to earn an 8th straight trip. Again, 8 straight trips to the NBA Finals, leading the Cavaliers to an 87-79 victory over the Boston Celtics in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference. And there's a tweeter here, the Rook versus the King, a picture there. In the first close game of the series, and in the lowest scoring game, James played all 47 minutes for his 6th straight Game 7 win. The NBA Finals begin Thursday, and Ivy Houston are Golden State. That'd be in Oakland. The Rockets host Game 7 of the Western Finals later tonight. Jason Tatum scored 24 points for Boston. As a rookie, was looking to return to the NBA Finals for the first time since 2010. And that is the headline in the Globe, and basically what happened to Boston. Just came up short, and that can appear to happen. I mean, it's one of those situations. Remember looking at the over-under. I don't have my calculator, so we have to do it old school here. Is, let's see, 16... 8 and 5, 15, so 160. On the over-under there, what is the one? Yeah, about, let's see, what did we say? 9. I'll do it again. 9, 7, 15. And we'll take 1 over there, and 8 and 8 and 7, 9, 7, 8 and 7, 9, yeah, wait a minute. Yeah, 9 and 7. Used to do this in our head when we were a kid. Anyway, that's how we learned to do, anyway. Okay. Yeah. 16. 1 here, 15. What? 160. 166. Yeah, you would have got The under in this particular game, fairly low-scoring operation that got out my pencil. Anyway, you would have been able, I think we talked about that last night. It was a lower-scoring game than we'd anticipated. I anticipated it to be a much higher scoring, but many times in a Game 7, the teams are just simply tired out. So now they can have a break after it'll be next Thursday when they start out. So they get the older bones rested up. And since we basically had, an 8-point game there, I believe that's the first 8-point game. Haven't looked at the quote-unquote line score yet to see precisely where we are. But we rolled along. Anyway, enough of that flummery here. And the hopes and dreams will come up again. The Washington Post, which is not known for its sports, whatever happens in Game 7, the Houston Astros Rockets succeed in their mission. Well, yeah, I suppose the idea of the team challenging the Golden State Warriors in the playoffs was foolhardy at best. There were some who advanced for tanking, specifically because the team couldn't be beat. Others simply resigned themselves to believe that this was impossible. The Warriors, of course, feature 4 future Hall of Famers in their Bryant's here, one of the best coaches in it, and no doubt about that. Sean Livingston, David West in reserve there, and of course their award-winning coach, the former Laker. So, in other words, they have the prowess, no doubt about that. General Manager Daryl Monroe told ESPN last June, "We're not unbeatable." Well, no doubt about that. After Golden State won its second title in 3 years, that is a fact, no doubt about that. But Golden State is very good, and the coach knows that. There's no matter who wins Game 7 at the Toyota Center. Houston's gamble has paid off, and Murray's assessment was correct. They've challenged Golden State in these Western Conference Finals. In fact, they have been the best team for much of the series, no doubt about that. But part of the problem is, and this is a problem that Boston faced, is experience. They've got Duran there. That's Golden State. When I say they, sorry about not being a little bit more specific. The formula team was used against, excuse me, the reason Golden State has looked so uncomfortable in this series is because Houston has made them uncomfortable, no doubt about that. The Warriors have never been a team that could handle being thrown around very well, and even before Mr. Duran arrived there, this was the formula team used against Golden State in the past, and to good effect. The Warriors usually survive. Well, if you have a deep enough bench, you can survive there. It turns out Houston was that team. It seemed impossible to pull it off, and who could have put it all together? The toughness to throw off the Warriors enough to beat them. Tucker has been a human bowling ball throughout the series, baranging into players at both ends of the coach and making his presence felt, and so forth, and Trevor Azera has given Duran all kinds of trouble on the wing. Clint Capella has been a monster in the pink, and so forth and so on. In 4 of the 6 games, registering 3, 4, 14, and 5 in games 4, 5, and 6. The individual effects, complete with James Hardy and Paul's orchestrating of Mike D'Antoni offense, and Eric Golden's bombing away from 3-point range, has allowed Houston to put a real scare into Golden State. No doubt about that. They're able to do that. Houston is capable of winning Game 7 without Paul. That's right, Paul is out, and that is unfortunate. Everyone around town is saying all the right things, and Paul is undoubtedly going to do his best to play in this game, but remember, with 50 seconds remaining in a 1-point game. Now, the postseason, he finds himself sidelined, almost uncertain because of the hamstring injuries. What he got, hamstring injuries are very, very difficult to get over, no doubt about that. If you have any idea, please let me know. That's Steve Kerr, whom we talked about earlier, and only slightly joking after the Warriors trail by 17 points. When you'll be to come back against a very good team like Houston, 17 points down, you have something actually going for you. No doubt about that. The Warriors have never doubted themselves to a fault, and even after a second straight fourth quarter collapse at Houston in Game 5, Golden State acted like all this had been to do was win a home game, and not always finding a way to win in Houston for the second time this season. The Rockets won't have Paul, but they still have Hardy and Gordon, a team that's capable of getting physical. And that's the whole idea. They can get physical with Golden State. You can get physical, but with teams that are very, very skilled, you have to watch out with being physical. The fortunes favor the bold, and in moments where many were thinking there wasn't a potential pair for forward for Murray, and the Rockets found one. No doubt about that. Rockets an upstart team. I haven't looked at the line score. We'll see that a little later here and see exactly where we are. Let's get kind of spin this up a little. The Washington Post has a very nice editorial here. More than 7 million people may have lost their driver's license because of traffic debts. 7 million people nationwide have lost their driver's license suspended for failure to pay court or administrative debts. Presses, as advocates say, is unfair, punishing the poor. The analysis by the Post. Incidentally, the Post has been very good at giving analysis in the past few years. About 10% of the total involves residents of Virginia, Maryland, and the District of Columbia. The total nationwide, it could be much higher based on the population of states that did not or could not provide data in this age of big data. At least 41 states and districts suspend or revoke license after drivers fail to pay traffic tickets, appear in court in response to certain tickets. Driver's license suspensions were criticized by anti-poverty activists. That was in Ferguson, Missouri, which they were running literally one of these little speed trap operations. And that in itself, anytime you drive through or observe a city that exists off of these speed trap revenues, that is a city that you don't want to live in if you can, and avoid the city. Revealed law enforcement used fines to raise revenue for state and local government. Suspensions could keep off the road, unsafe drivers off the road, but also could prevent people who haven't committed serious crimes from working, getting their children to work, getting out of debt, etc. The Post had records from 49 states and District of Columbia. Louisiana would not release the records without court requests that cost hundreds of dollars. Jurisdictions, truck driver suspensions differently, and some states may not or could not provide the information. In Virginia, 647,517 licenses had their drivers, had their license suspended as of 2016 for failure to pay fines and costs. Maryland suspending, this is incredible numbers here, 48,508. A licensed district suspended 3,300. That's not too bad. District doesn't differentiate between suspensions from failure to pay fines or failure to appear in court. That's according to the motor vehicles records. Like the districts, many states as Missouri and Utah don't track how many drivers lose their license because of court debts. Some states are trying to reduce that number of debts-related suspensions. Alaska, for example, doesn't have the authority to suspend license for unpaid court debts. That's the administrative spokesman there. California's Jerry Brown signed a law in June to prevent people from losing their license because of unpaid traffic tickets. In Maryland, then Governor Terry McCormick signed a bill in May of last year that made it easier for drivers with suspended license to establish payment plans they have any money to pay with. The district is mulling a bill of that nature. Would prevent residents who earn less than $40,000 a year from losing their license for not paying a court debt. Elser Silverman Large, the bill's office, said in a statement that unpaid parking tickets and two can plunge the D.C.'s low-wage workers into prolonged financial and legal jeopardy, losing of jobs. The Virginia-based Legal Aid Justice Center filed a class action in 2017 that claimed as the state suspended driver's license is an unconstitutional scheme. The president at the time, Barack Obama, filed a brief in support of the claim. Before it was dismissed by a federal judge, the dismissal is under appeal. It shows some of the rough way that you go. In Texas, driver's responsibility program, the state penalizes drivers with surcharges after they accumulate a certain number of points on their driver's license. Another scheme. Texas Public Safety Department said 1.4 million people have had their driving privileges, as they call them, suspended for non-payment of fees. In addition, 296,000 drivers can't renew their license after failing to appear in court. In December, a federal judge in Michigan issued a permanent injunction stopping the state from suspending driver's license of those too poor to pay court debts. In October, a federal judge in Tennessee temporarily restored driver's license of two drivers who failed to pay traffic-related debts. In a Tennessee case, a disabled man with cirrhosis of the liver lost his driver's license after not paying $441 in tickets for speeding, failure to maintain insurance, those kinds of crimes. This was in the Middle District of Tennessee. He was hospitalized after losing his license, preventing him from getting a medical treatment. The document said. The case also details the plight of Ashley Spurgeon, a 26-year-old single mother of 5 who lost her license after failing to pay $477.50 for speeding and failed to provide proof of insurance. Another courthouse trick. She was without a license for more than a year, she said, and temporarily lost her job at a Waffle House. This is the real consequences of in some of these areas where there is not any public transportation. In Charlottesville, that's in Virginia, the superintendent of the Albert Marie County Regional Jail wondered what charges were driving up the jail population years ago after it became overcrowded. Driving on a suspended license, one of the tops. We couldn't believe it. We thought there was some mistake. Concerned that inmates could never escape debt, Coomer set up a program in which offenders cleared to work outside of jail could pick up trash and have a $7.25 credit towards their court debts. The program resulted in more than $500,000 in court debts paid off in 3 years. So it did succeed, even at the low payment there. And we're going to somebody named Marzi Tobert, a Charlottesville man recently released from prison, lost his driver's license in 2007 after being incarcerated for drug and weapon charges. He was released in 2016, got his license back last year after delayed stemming from a $10,000 court debt and interest that he was when he was behind bars. Tobert had a number of jobs since his release, most recently working as a carpet cleaner, earning $12 an hour. Got his license back after the Fountain Fund, that's a non-profit micro-lender, to improve the lives of former inmates returning to society, lent him the $3,000 at 5% interest. 5% is pretty high. Anyway, for that help, Tobert said his path to getting a driver's license was an uphill climb. A 38-year-old man with a 6-year-old son, he had to hold down a job while retaking his driver's test and paying off his court debt. So these are some of the machinations with these states that hold a driver's license as a privilege. A driver's license in this society, because of various machinations involving lack of public transportation used for identification, should be a right. And an easy way to do that would have a national driver's license along with this real ID scheme they've got going with an ID. And there's some states that allow even undocumented workers to drive on a special license by using identification from their home countries, such as Mexico, that incidentally has a better identification system than the U.S. Nonetheless, let us move on here. Memorial Day, what the NFL owners could learn from the history of Memorial Day. This is by one of our favorite liberal types, E.J. Dion Jr. It is unfortunately appropriate for the National Football League owners to decide their rules attacking free expression the week before Memorial Day, a holiday dedicated to those who have given their lives to our nation's freedoms have been marred in political controversy almost from the beginning. The latest round of posturing and pandering around patriotism, he echoes the words more or less of Mr. Kerr, the coach of the Golden State Warriors. Samuel Adams said patriotism at its last is the last refuge of a scandal. Less qualified at an honest love of country is a virtue, not a vice, and nothing should soil the honor of men and women who sacrificed, made it possible to speak, worship freely, and to exercise democratic control of our government. Needlessly, Johnson was into something because patriotism often is manipulated in the name of power and advantage in the center of the NFL's wealthy overseers' money. And the contested history of Memorial Day is a story not only of innocent local pride, but of political and cultural clashes. Until 1966, for Congress to grant official recognition to Waterloo, New York, it was the first decorated the graves of Union soldiers in 1866 as the originator of the holiday. The historian James McPherson told a story of a Northern abolitionist who traveled. Now, this is Charlotte of Charleston, South Carolina, to organize schools for freed slaves on May 1st of 1865, a year before Waterloo. And this is actually a group of African-American children He led a group to a cemetery for Union soldiers to scatter flowers on a grave, which was the first Decoration Day. In the meantime, Southern women began organizing ceremonies for those who died during the Battle of Succession and accumulating in the process of Confederate Memorial Day. The General Logan, the commander-in-chief of the General Army of the Republic, the politically influenced Union veterans group, is widely credited with taking the holiday national. He called it GAR to hold a decoration rights. That was in 1868 for those who died to keep the country together. By 1891, every northern state had established May 30th as a holiday. It's no shock to holidays. Many current regional and racial tensions rose to surface by the time Barack Obama entered the White House. In 2009, a group of scholars, including McPherson, wrote President Obama urging him to abandon the practice that began with the racist President Woodrow Wilson of sending a wreath to the Confederate memorial at Arlington Cemetery. He responded what he hoped would be a unifying gesture. He laid the traditional wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. It has a wreath and had a wreath delivered to the Confederate memorial and became the first president to send one as well to African American Civil War memorial in Washington, which commemorates the service of 200,000 people of color who fought for the Union armies. And there was, let's see, and yes, in 2010, when President Obama chose to honor the war dead in Chicago, some of the conservative critics he was the only president not to lay a Memorial Day wreath in Arlington. That's flatly untrue. President Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and G.W. Bush and others also have been elsewhere on Memorial Day at least once during their terms. And this is when we get to history straight. Some phony claims and nasty innuendos built around the initial sins against patriotism and our veterans predate President Trump, but Trump's attack on NFL players who have kneeled during the national anthem to protest police brutality, racial injustice represents a particularly vile effort to mobilize political support by implying dissenting athletes, most of them African Americans, lack of devotion to the country. The privileged NFL owners chose to capsulate this divisive propaganda. The anthem at the heart of the discussion celebrates our country as a land of the free and home of the brave. Big question mark. Yet the owners' action in opposition of bravery and a blow to freedom. Many of the rights have spoken out forcefully for free speech on college campuses. Many of the right wing, that is. But they now propose to turn stadiums into safe spaces where conservatives deny others the liberty they claim for themselves. Well, that's not unusual. And kudos to conservative writers in Vietnam vet David French for calling out this contradiction. Democrat that even engaging with Trump on all this risk placing progressives on the wrong side of patriotism. But the history of Memorial Day should teach us that the meaning of our patriotism has long been a matter of necessary struggle. We should not let the divider in the Oval Office keep us from joining together in profound appreciation of our fallen. They perished on the flag that represented liberty and justice for all. The lives cannot surrender either of these, the living of these commitments. And this is E. Dion. And no doubt about Memorial Day, the fighting in the Civil War, the Great War, World War II. And what has happened is there have been other conflicts, such as Vietnam, and lesser conflicts that have been held up to represent, quote-unquote, fighting for freedom. It has nothing to do with it. There was no fighting for freedom in Southeast Asia, and never will be. There was none in Afghanistan or in Iraq. So those are phony events of patriotism to begin with. And also, as the minister from Chicago, Minister Louis Farrakhan, pointed out on how to properly display the flag. But the NFL, who made millions of dollars from these military endorsements, were improperly displaying the flag, as any quote-unquote scout would know. And these kinds of things citizens should be aware of. This is nothing more than petty moralizing, petty patriotism, and posturing, which is not a very good civics lesson for people that have not been exposed to, as of those of us growing up in the 50s and 60s, civics classes. The only ones get those now are immigrants, quote-unquote, aspiring to be citizens, and that is forgotten as quickly as it is taught to them. Let's see if we have anything left from the Washington Post here. The Indy 500 will Power wins the Indianapolis 500. Patrick crashed in the final race. Whoever that was. He's an Australian. Won the crash-filled Indianapolis 500. That was on Sunday afternoon. The Indy 500 used to be, somebody was talking about that. This is a female, Danica Patrick, getting that right here, in another crash in the Indy 500. The Indy 500 used to be on national TV, etc., and now it's a lesser event there. Let's see, we even have, I thought we had something about TV here, so no, not really. Not much there. I'm not even sure if commercial TV carries the Indy anymore. Probably not. A big week there. Somebody was talking about that had actually been to one of these. A professor of these deals. And just a week where people celebrated, sort of like the horse race in Kentucky, the Derby. Sort of like that. So I guess ABC was there, continued to taunt her rule by hosting an by 13 years after her debut here. She's likely to remain in the public eye. Not sure who this is. She's still on TV and figures to appear at some Packer games. I'm not sure. This is Danica Patrick, I suppose, and Aaron Rodgers were all smiles. Oh, well. Not certain. Oh, I see, I guess. But she returns this week to a farewell. Oh, Aaron Rodgers is the boyfriend, the Packer quarterback. Anyway, if you look at something long enough, let me just check the time and we'll do the sports here. I will go ahead and do the sports. On this Monday morning, quarterback here. Yeah, we'll get there in a minute here. ESPN basically had the same thing. LeBron muscles his way back to the finals is the headline here at ESPN. The Globe basically said the same thing. It was all LeBron James, as we expected. Played his 100th game of the season, logged in at 48 minutes. And overcame a 3-2 deficit after Kevin Love went down. The Celtics had been spotless, a 10-0 this postseason at the Garden before James and company delivered a lone season-ending blemish. Well, James and company are basically capable of doing that, doing a spurt. Jason Tatum drove hard to the hoop, ducked over James. The rookie then gave James a little post-duck bump. Tatum's three-pointer after James' turnover put Boston back out front, 72-71, with 6 minutes and 4 seconds to play. But again, experience here was the end of that period. So they once again were victorious. I believe in the NFL we have, let me just make sure, the game is later today. I'll look at it and we'll do the baseball scores. Yeah, they'll play tonight in Las Vegas, the Capitals and the Golden Knights of Las Vegas. I guess that says it all right there. Major League Baseball is approaching soon, a third of the season, if you can believe that. Our much celebrated baseball season. Atlanta was in Fenway Park and beat the Red Sox at 7-1. So the Sox and Celtics both took a licking and assume they'll keep on ticking. Well, at least the Sox will. The Angels were in New York, Yankees 3-1. And in 14, very long game there, the Astros were in Cleveland. Cleveland ended up winning the game 10-9. They both had, well, the Astros had 12 hits, no errors, and Cleveland 13 hits and no errors. The White Sox were in the Motor City once again. Tigers at 3-2. The Nationals were in Florida. They pulled the game out 5-2. The Orioles were also in Florida in Tampa Bay. However, the Rays 8-3 there. Toronto was in Philadelphia. Blue Jays win that game 5-3. The Cardinals were at the Pirates, and Cardinals finally win a game, if you can believe that one. 6-4. The Lions scored. The Cards had 8 hits, and the Pirates had 5 hits and 1 error. The Mets and Brewers in Milwaukee. Close game. Brewers 8-7. They didn't drink too much beer, I suppose. The Royals and Rangers in Texas. The Royals 5-3. The Reds and Rockies. I don't want to get that mixed up again. In the Mile High City, 8-2 Rockies over the Reds. The Diamondbacks and Athletics in Oakland, 2-1 the Athletics. The Twins and the Mariners in Seattle, Mariners 3-1. The Padres and Dodgers, that battle goes on. This time the Dodgers came up on top, 6-1. Dodgers had 10 hits and no errors, and the Padres 6 hits and no errors. And finally, the Giants were in Wrigley Field. Cubs 8-3 in that contest. The Giants had 9 hits, no errors, and the Cubs had 13 hits and 3 hits and 3 errors. I'm sorry. Still won a game with 3 errors. Very interesting situation. This will do it for the Monday morning quarterback. And as usual, we remember our partner and veteran Jerry Bertrand Pippin, who died in 2015. Have a good weekend, everyone. A good holiday, I should say, being a Memorial Day. And we remember those that have fallen in various wars, and celebrate the Constitution. The Constitution, above all, is the fabric that holds the nation together. It may be imperfect, but it is all we have, and of course it's being stretched and stressed every day with the present administration and the right-wingers in charge of government. And in many of the states, they have decided to penalize demonstrators of various things for blocking of freeways. Back to the days when Dr. King was demonstrating, state authorities, of course, they were setting in, and people were jailed and sent off to work camps, etc. Freedom is not free. Demonstrators are now in an environment where they could serve time, which is basically the same thing as happening to these driver's license people. Young people could lose their jobs. So again, that creates a situation that one has to obviously think about. But there are still enough young people out, high schoolers, college students, people that are in the reserve army or the unemployed, that can demonstrate and can amass days being incarcerated. That's unfortunate in 2018. We have an open source report yet to do, and we hope to get that out today. And good day from WBRN Radio and the Boston Red Network.